Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Bain. I am from Jamaica, so that's the explanation for the accent. So far, I've enjoyed the weather. I brought 3 jackets and I haven't had to wear any of them. Just extra weight in my suitcase. A little background about myself. I've been using Plone for definitely more than a decade. I run a software company that does Plone work and more recently has started to build products, some of them around Plone. And the company's name is Alteru. I'm here to talk about Mosaic, tiled layouts for Plone. So hopefully at the end of this, you'll have a better understanding of how Mosaic fits into the picture of Plone. Just a quick question, how many people have used Mosaic here? Just quick poll. 1.5, 2. Okay, I see some faces. I'm sure there are a couple of other people who haven't put up their hands, but I'm not going to pick on anybody, right, Beth? Okay, so let's get into this. So just so that you understand what to expect from this presentation, I want to put into context why we need this. Then I'll talk briefly, not exhaustively, but briefly about previous solutions. And then I'll do a demo of Mosaic. And I might talk about the future, but I'll probably replace that with just questions so that you can ask questions about Mosaic. So that's fine for everyone? Wonderful. Okay, so Mosaic is a Plone technology. And let's tell a little story. So here is Cara and Valdek, and they're running a conference let's pretend it's 2017, and all the presenters for PyCon Jamaica happen to also be Plone people, right? Because they just want to get all the warm weather. There's a little problem though. Valdek wants a really nice homepage. And he's not interested in learning, not even interested in learning Diazo, much less page templates and things like that. And Cara has a slightly different pain. She wants to be able to have different layouts. So for example, your presentations after the conference should have things like the slides and the videos and things like that. But before the conference, they might be a little simpler. And she doesn't really want to have to call a programmer to set that up for her. Shouldn't she be able to just make a few changes on the content and do that? She heard she could do it with Dexterity, but then someone told her, oh, you can even do this with Mosaic. So that's the pain point. But let's take a slight tangent before we solve their pain by giving you a history of how we used to solve that pain. So this is a brief, completely not exhaustive history of layout solutions. Firstly, I'll give you some context. Back in the day, layouts were done by CSS gurus who, for every new site project, they would do it from scratch. And you would tell them what you want, you'd do it in Photoshop, and then you'd wait a couple weeks and they'd come back with this site that looks like what you want. And then, if you wanted a particular page to look different, you'd do it up in Photoshop to say that's going to look different, and then they'd go back and, stitch and do what they need to do, and you'd get a new page. And repeat that, rinse and repeat, every time you need to get a new layout. Sounds like fun? Probably not. And then sometimes the pixels weren't exactly where you wanted them, and they'd say things like, well, it's not going to work that way because of X, Y, Z, or what's the resolution on your screen? Are you sure you're looking at it with the right browser? And da 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 da. So a couple people picked up on that frustration and they created these CSS frameworks. which basically allowed you to use grids to lay out your content. But it still required some amount of knowledge and skill to manipulate the grids. You needed to understand CSS classes, but at least you didn't need necessarily to go deep into CSS. As long as you knew the classes, you could lay out things. And so maybe a layout would move from a week or two to maybe 3 days or something like that, depending on the experience and so on. Some of these grid systems included Blueprint CSS, Bootstrap, Foundation, and of course, even one invented by Alexander Limy, one of the co-founders of Plone, called Deco.js. So that's a little bit about what was happening, and the why of all of this is that you want to get nice looking layouts, right? And the why of Mosaic is that you want to be able to lay out this type of stuff without having to push it off to some CSS geek, right? I'm a CSS geek. So these are the examples of the type of layouts you want to be able to get, right? You want your content to look as good as your theme. And what tends to happen is you get your theme, but then how do you get nice layouts from page to page to page to page? I mean, it's like you hand somebody a wonderful PowerPoint template and they're able to completely destroy it somehow. And possibly, if we have layout systems like Mosaic, we can make it easier for people to get it right, rather than having them have to dig into code and things like that. Let's continue talking a little bit about some of the Plone-specific solutions that exist and existed. So one that I've used is collective listing view, which allows you to create something of a layout, but again, you use a lot of code. There's Diazo. You can actually use this system called Diazo to move things around in your target layout. Just pull it from Plone and move it around in your target layout. But it still requires a certain amount of savvy to be able to do that. Much less than before, and it's a wonderful improvement. And that's what you use to give the general look for your theme. But once you get into the content, you want to do better layout. In fact, here is what some of these things look like. This is, for example, a browser view. Obviously, this is a snippet, incomplete. There are a lot of other things there. But this is enough to send a designer screaming, running and screaming. And to me, this is just a little bit of code. This is great. But this is going to scare away a lot of people. And here's what some Diazo rules look like. Again, they can be quite intimidating. I'm seeing someone cringing in the audience. So it's not necessarily the greatest of experiences to be staring at walls of text to do layout. So let's talk a little about what Mosaic can do for you. Here are the key concepts. What Mosaic makes possible is the ability to create a layout and then to make that layout reusable. And you can do a lot more customization than that, but for the sake of this talk, we'll work with those as the boundaries of what Mosaic can do. So let's talk about the two targets that we're trying to go for. Remember, Valdek wanted to get a cool homepage, and he didn't want to learn page templates, okay? And Cara, she wanted different layouts. She wanted to be able to have a different layout after the conference, you know, with maybe a video or slides. And she didn't want to have to call a programmer to create a new field for adding the video and then write the Diazo rule so that the video gets embedded properly and all that type of stuff. She just wanted to be able to just do it. That seems like a reasonable expectation nowadays when you can go to Facebook and just post things at will. So let's do the demo before the questions. So let's get some of these things out of the way. And so we have a couple talks here. Here is our Plone site that they've built, right? I decided not to theme it too much because we're focused on content layout, okay? We put in a couple talks, and we want to be able to showcase these talks, right? Because these are pretty good talks from some interesting persons, right? Who some of us might know. All right? So we're going to start with Kara's problem. Kara's problem was that she wanted to get a little more control over the layout without having to learn too many other new technologies. So let's see what Mosaic can do for someone like Kara. Okay? She was told by the person introducing her to this technology that all you have to do is change your display to support what is called a mosaic layout. So she goes into one of the talks and she switches it to use mosaic layout. Now that that is switched on, she goes in and she clicks edit, and she gets a screen that looks like this. Now, she had the benefit of, about 5 minutes of training, so she's an expert now in Mosaic. So she knows right away that this is the default layout, and she wants to customize it. And she knows she has to go to the layout button, and she clicks customize. What just happened? Well, over here, 2 new options showed up. One called formatting, which allows you to add padding and some styles and things like that. And one called insert, which gives you the ability to add fields from your content. So because this is a talk, it's going to have fields like, for example, the presenter photo. And she thinks the presenter photo would look wonderful, kind of next to some of this talk information. So she's setting it up to show up here. Then she wants to actually have the name of the presenter. That might be good. So we're going to add the name of the presenter. And let's add some details about the talk. So let's just add that down here. And turns out all of these talks are talks. So they did have a field called type of talk, but it's not useful for this. So we leave it out. But you might want to say who the audience is in case it varies from talk to talk. It will help people to select the talk they want. And once she's done that, she's actually created her custom layout. Okay. Now, she could just click save, but one of the things with this is because every talk is going to be using this layout, why not store it as a reusable layout? So let's see how you'd go about doing that. So we're going to go back to edit, and this time to make it reusable, we're going to say, I like this layout, let me save it. And I'm going to call it something original like talk layout. I noticed I clicked a little checkbox underneath talk layout. That's to make sure that it stays global. That means that any other editor on the site can also access this layout. And now we have a custom layout, and we can click save to save everything. And it means that instead of repeating all of that arrangement on every talk, we can now go to each talk and after cringing for a while, we can make sure that the talk is using the Mosaic layout. And if it is, notice we now have something called the talk layout. And if we just click it, we don't have to do much more. We can just click save. And magically, this talk also has that layout. Isn't that useful? And we can rinse and repeat for the rest of them. So we certainly don't want people seeing this. That makes no sense in the context of our thing. That's just generated because it's there. So just switch to Mosaic layout and edit, and you get the picture. And after a while, this can become quite brainless. You can even turn off notifications that are coming on your screen without skipping a beat. That was not planned. That was actually my mother. Okay, so we're going to do that again. And now, there you go. So all of the talks have this wonderful layout. There are a couple other things we could do to clean it up, you know, if you had another 30 minutes for this talk. But let's solve Valdek's problem now. Now recall that Valdek, what he wanted was to be able to have, you know, a nice, cool homepage. So let's do that. It turns out that his homepage is currently a document by default. So, but we can tell that document to use the Mosaic layout. It already is using the Mosaic layout. I went ahead like on a good cooking show and changed that. And what we're going to do is we're going to customize this page a little bit. We should probably say something about right. It's a little plug there. But let's customize the layout, right? Turns out there's this thing called a content listing. If you were at the keynote, you may have heard it referred to as a collection tile, right? All of these things, they refer to them as tiles. Unfortunately, a collection tile might not help the average user, so content listing might be an easier explanation. So it is called a content listing in this context. And let's actually list the talks. Wouldn't that be great if we could just say by type, I want anything that is a talk? That would be really nice. And maybe a tabular view of those talks. That would be super. And let's maybe add a little heading that says upcoming talks. Now, obviously, we could really go a lot harder with this, but this is just to give you an idea of what's possible. Let's save this and call it something like homepage layout. Might not even need to make it global. Save. And so now we have a nice front page. Maybe we want to feature a talk. That would be nice. That way we might be able to get a nice picture there. So let's do that. Let us feature a talk. That would be great. So I'm going to click customize, insert, and I'm going to insert something called existing content. Okay? And I know that my talks are located on the talks. Oops. Let's do that again. Rewind. Okay. My talks are located on the talks. Actually, let's just find a talk. I think there was a talk by Calvin. Well, I know I have a talk called. Okay. We're going to win this. There we go. Talks. All right. So let's choose this talk. And notice how it loads it up into my cursor. So I can then choose where I want to put it. I'm going to put it next to the summary. All right. And I'm going to move this up. See if I can get that below here. And maybe make that a little bigger. And let's add some rich text above the talk, and we'll say featured talk. We'll make that have a heading, and save. Now notice I didn't save it as a new layout. I just customized my front page. So sometimes you want to do a one-off customization, and sometimes you want to do something more. Now, one of the things that we need to get back to though, we want to make sure that after the talk, we can show maybe the slides from the talk. Okay? How am I doing for time? Can someone tell me when I have about 10 minutes or so? So let's head over to the talks, and we'll choose one of these talks, and let's embed slides for this talk. I'm actually going to embed not the real slides for the talk, but just some slides. So it turns out that there is something called an embed tile. Very, very useful. I can go to Layout Customize, and I can insert what is called a raw embed. Now, personally, I would probably rename this. I'd probably call raw embed embed, and then I would call the other embed O embed, because it's, or maybe it's auto embed. And if time allows, I'll show you the difference. But I'm going to do a raw embed because it allows me to take snippets from any site that allows you to share, and I can put that snippet in my raw embed. So I'm going to choose raw embed, and I'll call this slides, and let's share some slide stuff. Oops, here we go, and save. So once the talk is done, you may want to actually have talk slides. That would be a good thing to do for your conference. And I'll add another rich text field. I find myself using rich text fields a lot. Just use it as a heading, and I'm going to format it. I'm going to make this a new layout. So the save button under the layout menu allows you to save whatever's on the screen as a new layout. The big green button is just to save, right? So I'm going to create a new layout, and I'm going to call this one Talk with Slides. And it basically, it uses this as my template for all my other stuff. Let me, oops, sorry. Okay, so now after the conference, when the slides are ready, they can be embedded right here. And because I have it as a new layout, it means that you can wait, and 5 minutes after the presenter has finished, if they've pushed it to slide share, you get the URL, you get the share embed, and you just drop it right there. So as soon as Tom has done his presentation, we could say edit, and we could say layout, change, because he's now finished his presentation. And unfortunately, I don't have one for him. Is it safe to steal yours, Rob? Okay, so we'll pretend that Tom did this presentation, although we know it's really Rob. And we're going to go to the raw embed. Just click edit, replace it there. And it's the same pattern for almost any tile that you're working with. You can drag it around, lay it out, and they contextually make sense. So a raw embed expects you to paste some embed code. What is called an embed, it will try and embed it based on just a URL. So maybe it should be called a URL embed. We can decide on that. But here we go. And here are the slides, and they work as expected. Okay, so that is the experience of a typical site manager. Should we look at the experience for a site administrator? Anybody interested in that? I see like one person shaking their head. Okay, a little more than one person, but sure. All right, so just bear with me. We're going to just look a little bit in the back to see what it's like for somebody who is a site administrator. For a site administrator, there's something called the Mosaic layout editor. And all the powers of Mosaic are wrapped up in a manifest file. So if you want to create a new one manually, you just create a new line in your manifest file. You give it a name, cool-layout. You can even specify what content type that layout should be associated with, or not. So if you want it to be associated with everything, you just get rid of that little for option. And of course, a title is always useful. This is a cool layout. And then you can just create it. So you just say cool layout.html. Now, I haven't gotten to the level where I can just type this stuff out of my head. So I'm just going to steal a layout here. But just by doing that, so someone might say to you as a site administrator, I want a cool layout. I want it to have, I don't know, a video on top, right? Well, you could do that by just stealing some embed code and then saying, all right, let's add that video on top. Let's see what happens if we use our cool layout. I hope was that the cool layout? Yeah. Good. Let's see what happens if we change the home page to use this cool layout. So this is slightly untested. Many things could go wrong at about this point, but let's go. So we're going to go to layout, and we're going to change our layout, and it's going to warn you. It's going to say changes will destroy existing custom layouts, and the universe will implode, and blah blah blah. So you're going to choose this is a cool layout, and magic. I remember I embedded a video that was I just did it manually inside of the manifest file and the cool layout HTML. Here it is right here. So there are situations where you may want to do that. You may want to have a special layout for somebody whose profile has a badge. So now they have I presented a talk at at PyCon Jamaica, and they get a badge for that, or whatever. Yeah, so what I've demonstrated here are the key concepts behind Mosaic. Now, if you dig deeper, there's certainly a lot more you can do. There are customizations that you can do on the file system so that you can redistribute those for other users. But these are the core things and the core experiences that either a site editor or a site administrator would experience. So thank you for your time, and I think we're done. I don't think I had any other slides, but hopefully at this point, Cara will be happy and Valdek will be happy. And hopefully you can make some use of Mosaic. Some of the things I haven't shown you because of time, I didn't show you how to install Mosaic because Mosaic is an add-on. And I didn't show you some of the warts. But you know, if you come across issues, there's the Plone forum, and you can go there and get help and report bugs because this is still a release candidate. It's used in production by some very big sites I just discovered recently, like about 5 minutes ago. Well, that's an exaggeration, but yeah. So thank you for your time. If you have questions, this is my contact information, or if you want to ask me the questions now. Yes, sir.
David, is there a way, so you've got a talks content type, is there a way that you can make everything that has the talk content type automatically use a Mosaic layout?
Yes. I should warn you, it requires going into the ZMI. So if you can stomach that, I can show you how to do that. Is that fine? So for those who don't know, the ZMI is this ugly part of, it's not really Plone, it's the stuff that Plone sits on top of. It works, yeah, it works.
You don't need to show it.
Oh, I don't need to show it.
Whether or not it's possible.
Yes, it's possible, it's possible, it's
And
possible,
I have
yeah.
a related question. So can you, in the same way,
Mm-hmm.
and you would do this through the ZM Manager,
Mm-hmm.
tell it to apply a certain layout in certain situations, like an if-then or a child parent or something?
I don't know if that's possible yet.
Okay.
I mean, it may be possible, I don't know how to do that. But what you can do is, as Steve had asked, you certainly can make it default to use in Mosaic. Yeah.
David, if you have a theme that you like, and if you copy it into where you were last at in the site end and paste it into Mosaic, would it then display that theme?
Yeah.
You can modify with blocks and so on?
Yeah, yeah. For simplicity, I didn't use a custom theme. But for simplicity, I didn't use a custom theme. But you certainly can use a custom theme. Perhaps in a lightning talk, I'll demonstrate that if I get to do one of those lightning talks. Because one of the things that we use a system called Gloss. We built it in-house, and it allows you to do themes really quickly. And on top of that, the markup, it allows to keep your CSS from conflicting with other stuff. And then you can just use Mosaic, just like you would with an standard Plone Barceloneta theme. So short answer, yes, you can use other themes.
Let me get this straight. So let's say that I want to just get this straight. So you've got a layout. Right now you've got a site that has a certain theme.
Correct.
You have a Mosaic layout, and you can transfer that Mosaic layout to a different Plone site that does not have that theme, and the theme will get transferred?
Not the theme,
Right.
the layout.
Right. Okay.
Right. So you could, especially with the back end that I showed you, you could just copy the HTML files and things from the manifest file, move it to another Mosaic-enabled site that happens to use a different theme, it would still get the layout. And then you could tell,
Right, you would still get the layout, but pick up the theme of the new site.
it would pick up the theme of the new site. Yeah.
So it uses, I think it uses different class names than you would probably put in your theme. So wherever you drag new stuff, it would use those class names for the grid system. And so it would be separate from your theme, but it would look.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Thanks, Rob. So you've helped twice now. You've allowed me to use your presentation. And yeah.
So along the same lines, could you tell us more about the grid system it uses? Like, what is it based on something? Is it managed that permanently?
As much as I can tell from the grid system, it seems to be slightly inspired by Deco,
Okay.
but it's not Deco. It uses something called, all the classes are called Mosaic Dash
I saw
something,
that.
right?
Do you know how
True.
many columns it's based on or anything?
Right. So it doesn't use.
So you know, it has its own names. Like
Yeah.
Mosaic,
So if you look at it, right,
It has about 4 columns.
you can't get much more than 4 columns because it uses
That was my main
it
question.
uses quarter, 1/3. It doesn't use numbering to get down to smaller sizes. So as last I checked, it looks like 4 is the most number of columns you can get. You might know, Rob.
I don't know.
Okay.
It uses 4 columns, and I believe you can modify to use your own framework.
You could, okay.
So if you want to use like Sorb or Bootstrap, I've seen in the documentation you can do that. So that's a little bit more deeper.
Right. I certainly haven't. I haven't tried to do that. I'm quite happy with what it's doing now, and for me, the value to me is not always for me. The value for me is to be able to hand it to somebody who is just getting started, and they're still able to deliver value to a customer, because now the layout is about dragging it around. So that's the value for me.
So the current implementation of the editor is limited.
There are certainly limitations to the current implementation, but when you compare what used to be the case and what was required to do layouts, this is a leap.
I'm just saying about the columns.
Yes. Definitely there are limitations, but you're talking about, you're saying my new helicopter has limitations compared to my bicycle. I'll take the helicopter.
But you as a developer could make a custom tile type that
Certainly.
didn't have any limitations.
Certainly. Actually,
Do something special.
one of the things that's great about this system, and it may take a little while for more developers to get comfortable with it. I'm still learning myself. Custom tiles. So you can start to create special tiles for your use case. You can imagine a weather tile for a weather website where they could just pull in a weather widget as a tile. You certainly can do those things. Or a currency conversion tile for a bank. Mortgage calculators for, I guess, a bank as well. You could do a lot with just a little bit of customization. Now, for that, you're not going to tell your designer, layout person to do that, but it's not a lot of work for a developer.
There's also integration with Rapido.
Yes, I should. I'm sorry. I'm staying at the same house as Eric, so I really should mention this. There's this really powerful system for customizing Plone's functionality called Rapido. And Rapido already allows you to embed Rapido blocks as tiles into Mosaic. So it means that if you create a block, just think of anything that you might want, like a ratings button, which is the example that Eric uses. Now you could have a page for talk ratings as a tile. And it's the integration is not the prettiest yet, but it's good enough that if you know the path to the block, you use the path almost like you'd use an embed code. And you just put the path to the block, and then it loads it up, and you can put it anywhere on the page. So yes, you can use Rapido for your layouts. Right. I don't have much more to say. So questions. How much time do I have left? Did I go too fast?
I think we're ending at 12:40, right? So-
Yeah. You're
Oh, right. So I should be finished. Oh, thank you for your time.